Hey folks, Dr. D here. So today we're going to be replacing the shoes, hardware, wheel cylinder, and the e-brake cable on the passenger side of a 97 Jeep Cherokee. First thing I'm going to be taking off are the two container springs here and here, one over the top, one underneath of it. That's one. Two. Okay, so those are out. So these just fish out of here like that. There you go. So the next thing we need to do, we're going to grab our compression tool, this guy here. This makes it very easy. So the way this works, little cap over a spring, and there's a rod that runs through the back here. I'm going to put my finger on that to hold it still and keep it from sliding around. I take this, I push it over, and I turn it. Try on this side. See why that's being so difficult. Okay, so that one, you just see how you just push it in and it pops out. I'll show you the little detail here. So here's the pin. Has a funny little tip on it there. One, it's kind of flattened out. The hole that it goes into accepts that. As you press it down and turn, it's going to lock, like so. And so when you're undoing it, you're compressing the spring and turning it and then popping it out. This side over here is being recalcitrant. There we go. Just how to get a better angle. All right, so now we have this. We can actually just pull this back and slide the whole thing out. Over here, the only thing you have to do now is disconnect the emergency brake connector, which is right here. This guy back in here, right? Just kind of fish it out. Angle's kind of funny for me, so bear with me. All right, so there you go. That's the e-brake connection there, and here's our whole drum brake assembly. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this spring and this little piece here off of the shoe and put it on our other shoe. There are 6 connection points where the brake shoe is going to rub against the backing plate. There are 3 more over here, you can't see them, but pretty obvious. So these kind of raised up areas on the backing plate. I'm going to use my little Russian rubber wheel, just go over these so they clean up, and then I'll put some anti-seize on them. Not going to show you that, but that's another step. Oh hey, and the last thing I forgot, there is this little piece here, which is what actually helps your parking brake to function as it should. I'll be replacing the spring on this. Be sure you keep an eye on which way it's going to go. There is a narrower end, and there is a thicker end, and the narrower end is going to accept the spring. The narrow end of the spring goes over there. So we're going to keep this as well.
What I need to do now is to get the emergency brake cable out of the backing plate. And the way this slides, the way it connects, when you push it through, there's this little thing here, and it has 3 metal teeth that kind of expand as you push it through. It locks it in place. So the way to get these off, I'm going to grab a 13 millimeter. I'm just going to slide it over here. I'm basically going to push it over this and compress those teeth. And there's all the teeth all pushed in. I can just pull the thing out of the back.
I'm replacing the wheel cylinder, which is this thing here. It basically screws into the back with 2. It's hard to get an angle here. 2, I think, 8 mil screws, and then there's the brake fluid line. Actually, the brake line is a 10, so we'll just crack that just a smidge. Make sure the line doesn't move all the way around. All right, so now we're going to loosen up these 2 bolts here. All right, so all I'm doing here is I'm just hand undoing those bolts that I just loosened up. The wheel cylinder. There's 1, they're pretty dainty. 2, dainty. And now I'm just gonna kind of gently nudge my wheel cylinder, just kind of loose up a little bit. All right, so it's pretty loose in there. That's good. We can see it jiggling around back there. Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna unbox my new wheel cylinder, or the two holes that it's gonna bolt into. Here's the bleeder, and that is where the brake line is gonna go. So if you want the bleeder on top, brake line is gonna go in that hole there. All right. You're just being difficult, aren't you? Trying me. All right, so one little guy's tightened in there just to hand tighten it down and keep you wiggling around. Second guy, hand tighten it down. All right, we'll reseat our brake line in here. We really want to make sure that this goes in flush and not at any weird angle or anything wacky, because we do not want to strip this. So tighten the cylinder down. Now first, make it not all the way. I want a little bit of wiggle room, but not a ton. Okay, it's loose enough that we can play with this and not get too worried about it seizing on me. Okay, and with that, the brake line is snug. For good measure, I'm going to pop my little black bleeder valve cap over here because, man, these things are a treat. So there is our new wheel cylinder installed, snugged in, all good to go. Thing looks like it's in good shape. All the seals look good. Seems very happy. The next step here is going to be to install a new e-brake cable to the passenger side. All right, folks, so we have the new parking brake cable on. So there it is there. It's in the back. It's running along there, back on top of the diff. And coming out right here, on top of the diff, going up in there. And then it is reconnected. See if I can find the camera there. There you go. So it's going in here. This is our new guy. Popped right in there, same way as the other ones. What we have to do now is we have to take off the adjuster. So I just kind of put this over to the side. We'll take off the spring. All right. Let's get our old shoe out of the way. I'm gonna go over here. The flat side goes against the shoe. The curve is going to go over the adapter. So I'm going to slide this down, push this in place, seat it, put our connector back on, and slide it with the flat ends, and then it slides up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the spring, and we're going to grab a flathead and just kind of pop it over the top so it connects up. All right, there we go. There's our star adjuster behaving as it should. So one thing I did do, I did reattach the e-brake line to the e-brake assembly bit here. It's a little annoying. You just basically have to slide the spring back as best you can, and then slide it into this little housing here. So I have my new shoes all laid out. The star is installed. Make sure that you have the right one for each side. On the passenger side, it will thread like a normal bolt. On the driver's side, it will thread the opposite direction. If you get these wrong, your brakes will begin to lock. Not a great thing. Got the spring on here. I have some anti-seize on the 6 points. So I'm going to seat this on loosely. I'm going to hook up the e-brake this little bit here, slides through in this hole right here. Yeah. Okay. Got the e-brake connected up. So I like to put on the rear shoe first, just to secure it down. Then we'll do the leader. I have an order that I want to put on my other springs and hardware. Do that in a second. Before we do that, we need to get this bit in here. So I'm going to grab my new spring. I'll remove this, turn on my discard. Just put a little bit of anti-seize in here because it takes a little bit of abuse. Not too much. A little bit on that end takes a little abuse too. And I like to put this with this little spring nub side down. By the way, there's a skinny end and fat end. The skinny end is going to go on. All right, and you're going to seat this right behind e-brake. It is a little bit annoying when you're trying to situate it because it needs to line up and it relies on the pressure of everything kind of squeezing together to hold in place. But we don't have that pressure now. I'm going to change my gloves because they are covered in anti-seize and I don't want to wreck my brakes anymore. So we're going to take our pins. This is our pin. And here's our new spring and our new spring cap. We're going to, just like we took them off, this is going to go to the back. I'm going to slide through. It's going to go through there. I'm going to turn this and it's going to lock. All right. All right, I don't know if you can see that, but it is popping through over here. So now I'm going to get my tool, see which direction we're facing, see if I can line this up as best I can. It is a bit of a dance. Sometimes I'll even use my knees. All right, so that one actually went on pretty easily. So that's exciting stuff. We have one on. It's obviously not seated exactly right, but we'll play around with that a little bit. Let's get our other one on. Same drill. So we'll put this through the back over here, feeding it through the hole. This time we have to situate our brake, and we have to do a little bit of jiggling around to get it all to behave itself. Go. All right, so we have that popping through. We do the same drill we did last time with this guy, but again, this time it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge because the angle is weirder and we have this wiggle room. I've already messed it up. All right, it's locked on there now too. So I'm just going to kind of knock these guys around in place a little bit so they're behaving themselves. There's a couple things here. The only thing that we have left to do is to put on our springs. What these do is they're going to hook into these holes here, and they slide around. They get pulled over this bit here. A couple things we need to do first. First thing we need to do is it's our emergency brake cable. That's going to go on first. Slides on like that, and it's going to go off towards this way because it's going to run around a little router which will connect up to the adjuster mechanism down here. So we're just going to kind of put it there for now. Here is that little router I was talking about. It's basically a little guide, so it's going to run through there. This is my tip. There's a hole here. There is a nub on the back of this here. This part has to sit flush inside of this hole. If it's not seated flush, this cable will slide behind it. This cable for this guy. This cable will slide behind it and you will not have effective emergency braking. To hold it in place, I'll put a little bit of anti-seize on the back of that, just to keep it from kind of help it to slide in place and help it to stick, really. Just sort of sticks in there, Okay, so the trick is, this is the only tricky part. Well, it's not the only tricky part, there's a couple tricky parts, but this needs to sit over that line proper way. This guy here, like that. It has to go over that, over the guide. And when you're putting your spring in, so this spring here, when I'm seating it through the hole, I have to make sure that I'm not dislodging it or discombobulating it in some way. It is a slight hassle. Seat it in there properly. Yay. So now I have to make sure that I put this guy back and I run it over that so it behaves itself and doesn't act stupid later on. So here's the tricky part. When I stretch this spring, this white spring, with my tool here, it's going to want to pull that guide out of place. Springy, so they're not always the easiest thing to maintain pressure on from underneath, but do what you can. Put our last spring on here, so through there, and we're going to stretch it over the top here. All right. So, all right, our brakes are good. Adjuster's all set. So our only thing left that we have to do here is to, this required a little bit of fishing around. I'll adjust the camera here. So, our springs are in place. Everything's good. Here is our adjuster. The back of the adjuster has a spring here, and this acts as a hook. And it's going to hook around, it's going to slide through there and catch. So sometimes it just requires a little bit of finagling, maybe a curse word or two to get it to behave itself. Okay folks, so we got that all situated. Here's what I was saying. Assembly for the e-brake connection has to go around this little thing here. It's going to go back in and it's going to catch over that. What this does is it's going to keep the tension on the star adjuster down here. All right, so I think we're all squared away for this. I'm going to squirt it down with some BrakeClean just to make sure I didn't make any extra messes, and then we'll get our drum back on.